Welcome to the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP, TRAP. Please follow us and join in the conversation on Twitter @Advisor Podcast, where you can suggest ideas and themes you'd like the TRAP team to discuss. Also remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a 6 out of 5-star review on iTunes. Doing all this really helps us, which means we can do more to help you. Now let's head over to the studio for the latest pile of TRAP.
Yes, indeed, dear trappers. Welcome back to what many people are calling episode 82 of the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP Trap. My name is Lick Ninken, and joining me as ever in the digital studio of doom are the three other horsemen of the apocalypse.
Still together.
Andy Ultrahart, Carl Delavocci, the voice widger, and
hello,
Alan, the storyteller Smith. Now, gentlemen, we have a show packed full of absolutely nothing. So let's start unpacking it straight away with another high-energy review read out by my very good friend, the Right Honourable Mr. Andrew Ursine Hart.
I've got two this week because they're coming in thick and fast, but please do keep them coming. The first one is from Jim_membership entitled 5 stars, entitled A Beer-Fueled Intergalactic Spectacular. Here we go. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, the four horsemen of the apocalypse decided to boldly go forth where no financial advisor had been before, a podcast. Quite true. In creating TRAP, every fortnight they refresh the parts other podcasts cannot reach. So I bet Alan, Andy, Carl and Nick all drink Carling Black Label. If I didn't know better, I would also say they are also my fathers. But what I can say is that if Carlsberg did podcast, it would indeed be TRAP, probably the best podcast in the world. Final review from MSRKQ. 5 stars entitled Essential Listening for Advisors. This show deserves way more ratings and traction. It probably has to do with Apple's review rating system, which almost made me throw my laptop out of the window. Anyway, the show is always packed with engaging and useful content, and the links and further resources are gold. Thank you to the Trap Pack. I've discovered gems such as Nick Murray, A Week in Charts, All In, and much more. If you ever run out of content ideas, as a former UK advisor now advising in Europe, I would be happy to defend the admittedly sometimes fair negative view of offshore advisors and practices. Keep up the good work, chaps. Mark Quinn. Back to you, boss.
Superb. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for those reviews, gentlemen. Keep them coming in. They're brilliant. That's very kind. Yeah, I know the Apple review leaving system I think is a bit tricky. But you can also leave reviews on some Android apps as well. I know Pocket Casts, you can leave reviews. I don't know whether it feeds through the algorithm somewhere, but if you listen on Pocket Cast, please do leave a review for us there. Okay, let's crack on. Let's leave a timestamp on episode 82 of the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP Trap, with some topical tidbits. The four of us have just had an off-site management meeting, executive debrief, boot camp, startup, work through something or other in the beautiful city of Lisbon in Portugal, where we were blessed once again with just amazing weather. It was about 28 degrees and blue skies. Flew back into Luton. It was like arriving in, I don't know, the Soviet Union 30 years ago. Not just because it's Luton, but the weather was bad. So we had a great time. Who wants to start off on the debrief?
I'll go. So the debrief went as follows. We'll all meet on morning one for breakfast and we'll do the TRAP stuff. So that's what we did. We met up. We talked about TRAP. We could agree on absolutely nothing. So we agreed that we would park that
And go for lunch.
and move on with the rest of our few days. But we have decided that on the next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to talk to our audience about it. And we're going to talk about, well, what should the future of TRAP look like? So we would really love massive engagement with that, because it is fair to say there's loads of things we could do. We could also do just nothing and just keep going as we're going. So look, the input from the people who matter most, our listeners and our viewers, that's what really matters. So please do engage with the next episode on exactly that.
I think it was a successful trip. The Trap Pack are still together. I think at various parts during the trip, each of us said to each of us, I love you, maybe after a few pints. And each of us said to each of us, I'm going to kill you, probably also after a few pints. I shared a room with Alan, aka the non-stop talking room.
You
Nick and Carl,
lucky boy.
I actually shared a bed with Alan, but we'll move on from that. Your sleeping habits will stay in Lisbon. Nick and Carl shared a room, aka the no speaking once you're over the threshold room. So yeah, it was
Perfect.
lots of fun.
It worked really well, actually. It was like lots of noise from one room and total silence.
Total Trappist. It was a Trappist, retreat in the other room. It totally was.
I knew I could talk each morning when Nick went, "Good morning."
Yeah.
Oh,
You now have permission to talk.
we don't need to be mute anymore. That's good.
I was just
It
going
was
to say,
great,
I'd
though.
never
It was
been
great.
there before. I thought it was fantastic. Yes, the weather
Yeah, I loved
helped.
it.
And we went on a trip. We went out of town, what place called Qashqai, didn't we? That was a highlight for me. Just about 40 minutes on a train, which cost all of €5 return. Fair distance outside of the city. We had an incredible lunch overlooking the beach. I mean, I know they did say it was unseasonably warm, but there was literally people sunbathing on the beach in mid-October. But the city of Lisbon itself, I thought I was very impressed. Having been to a few of these other cities, Spanish cities and what have you, that I wasn't overly impressed by. I just thought Lisbon was fantastic, just really good. Everything you want for a few days break in the autumn. So thumbs up from me, Andy.
Yeah, it was a 40-minute train drive or train ride, and then an hour and 40-minute walk to try and find the restaurant. But we got there in the end. And
I've never
We
met
wanted to get our
somebody whinge so
steps
much
up.
about a little stroll.
We could then claim it was a
18,000 steps
hiking
that day.
holiday,
Yeah.
a hiking offsite.
Anyway, moving on.
But,
Okay, it was very
no
good.
harm done. Yeah.
No harm done.
Well,
No harm done. No harm done.
moving on.
Okay, so moving on. So straight back into the weeds of this thing of ours. I saw an article. I don't know how we missed it, but we missed it. We did. It came out in August, and I think, as Carl was highlighting in a minute, BlackRock had a similar thing at the same time. But back in August, Vanguard, the US, the parent side of Vanguard, came out with a media piece saying that for them, the ideal portfolio going forward for the next decade is 70% bonds and 30% equities. And these things, they tend to come up and then they just get forgotten, don't they? No one's ever held to account. I think these things were coming out about 10 years ago saying not a dissimilar thing, that, it's expect lower future returns from equities going forward. And of course, we know what's happened over the last decade or so, indeed since March 2009, really. So really straight, I don't know. I mean, the ideal portfolio for whom? Somebody who wants to run out of money before they run out of life. 70% bonds and 30% equities. Yeah, obviously bonds are cheaper now than they have been for a long, long time, but that still doesn't mean that you necessarily want to hold them for 10 years plus in any significant amount, I would have thought. So I've stored that away in trusty old Evernote with a reminder. In August 2035, it'll pop up if I'm still alive, and remind me just to investigate how the 70 bond 30 equity portfolio fared over the last decade. But Carl, we have talked about the BlackRock prognosis that came out.
I think we were just chatting about this before we come on air. I think the BlackRock idea was 60% equities, 20% bonds, and then 20% in alternatives, which would include perhaps crypto, if I'm remembering this right, but definitely private equity. It was their kind of private equity play, right? It was private markets should be in all portfolios. So look, they're interesting studies. As you know, I'm sticking to my guns on this. I have no problem with a chunk of bonds in portfolios. Yes, they have underperformed the last few years, but it's I think we're always saying that we should invest in what has always worked. And for me, I think our average client would be in 70-30. So I'm obviously not going to diss that. I think it's a really strong position to be in, and I think long term, I'm very comfortable with that kind of an asset split.
Yeah, interesting. I see your hands are raised, guys. I will come. I was just setting up a new client portfolio this morning, going into taking retirement benefits from his pot via the pension cake slices or uncrystallized fund pension lump sum, to give it its terrible name, putting 3 years worth of planned withdrawals into a short-dated global bond fund for that emergency pot, and it always typically works out at about 20% of the portfolio. 20, 15, 25% of the portfolio. So they're ending up with 70-30s, 80-20s by default in retirement, if not so much in the accumulation stage.
Yeah, and fair play for raising that, because that's by default then your clients are probably in, I don't know, 85-15 or something like that. So it's not that you're not in bonds, it's just it's for a portion of someone's bespoke portfolio, and that's the important part.
Correct, and it's very, very strategic. There's a reason. There's a real reason for it. Ultra, then storyteller.
Sorry, Carl, did I miss here? You said your typical client ends up in a 70-30, 70% being equities, yeah?
Yeah.
This article saying 30% bonds. Sorry, 30% equity, 70% bonds. Is that clear?
Sorry.
Yes.
Oh no,
That's
hang
what
on.
it's saying.
70% bonds, it says.
This
that's what I said.
is saying 70% in bonds, 30% in equities. Sorry,
I'm glad you guys have read the topical tidbits and just given it the time.
I'm reading it. Yeah, so I think that's
why I wouldn't talk about it if it was 70 equities, 30, because I think I've got no issue with that. Really, that's better than 60-40. No, they're saying 70 bonds, 30 equity for the next decade is the best portfolio.
Yeah. So my 2 points were: it's very dangerous to make predictions, and it's even more dangerous to bet against productive companies, as in owning companies rather than loaning to companies. Alan.
I do remember, Nick, you alluded to that. Vanguard had, I don't know if they still have, but they had a chief economist in the UK, at least anyway, Peter something or other. And I do remember his prognosis maybe a decade ago was not quite as bearish as this, but it was pretty down on, anticipated returns from equities are going to be extraordinarily modest at that time. And it was a big thing. They produced papers about it at the time. And clearly his guesswork at the time has proven not to be correct. And it's a natural thing to say. When you've been in the back of a long bull run, it seems natural. There is a thing called reversion to mean. Returns long term will be a bit lower if they've had an above average decade. You would expect that reasonably, maybe, if things will be. So I take it with a pinch of salt. Fair enough. Everyone's entitled to their view and their opinion. But I mean, I haven't read the paper, but for them to say that across the board, because there's somebody who's a 25-year-old accumulator saving like hell for their future, and someone who's a 75-year-old in spending phase, who's gifting money to grandchildren and blah, blah, blah. So it's a bit, it's a bit overly general to my mind. However, in summing all this up, as has been mentioned before, to quote a phrase, the best portfolio is the one that you'll stick to through thick and thin, and it also enables you to meet your lifestyle goals and objectives. End of. That's it. As long as you can stick to it through thick and thin, then, and it meets your goals, you're good to go. So it's a bit too generic and general for me, these sort of statements.
Well said.
Yeah. And I think one of these predictions always ignore is human ingenuity. Nobody knew 10 years ago that AI would happen, right, and change the whole landscape of pretty much everything. And we won't know what's going to happen in the next 10 years. That'll drive earnings in a different sector.
This is the
they just
thing.
seem to think it's the status quo, and they project the status quo going forward.
Yeah, if you spend any time understanding what the kind of the what do they call them, the mega scalers in the US, these Mag 7, Mag 5, Mag 10, whatever, the trillions that they're pouring into this, they're not doing that for fun. The expectation that the entire world is going to be dramatically changed over the next decade. It seems a very bearish outlook to just get it. You have vast majority of your life savings in what are generically defensive assets in maybe the greatest time in human history that we're about to experience. Yep. Hey ho.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. We're given that a damn good thrashing, so I think we can move on to the next section.
PRSA Corner.
I missed it, so I said I'm finding a PRSA article.
You're going to squeeze something. You're going to wedge a wadging.
We had the budget here recently, as I mentioned, and this kind of seemed to slip under the radar, but it was in the Sunday Times. So the Pensions Authority are in charge of looking after PRSAs and what PRSAs can invest in. And I have mentioned before about the gazillions that have gone into PRSAs over the last few years. And one of the things with PRSAs, you can do a standard PRSA or a non-standard PRSA. And in the non-standard PRSAs, you basically can invest in whatever you want, right? So it's like, now look, the standard PRSAs are probably too restricted, right, in terms of their investment choices. But you can invest in unregulated investments, property, loan notes, this kind of stuff. But the Pensions Authority have come out to say that they're going to tighten up those rules. Now, I am familiar with some clients who have transferred to PRSAs and invested in loan notes because they could do it right now. Or there used to be a rule in the old executive pensions that you couldn't have more than 50% in any one asset. So that precluded you from owning all property in your executive pension. But no such rule exists in the PRSAs. But it seems that they're going to tighten these rules up. Now, there are people who are having to transfer out of executive pensions and into either PRSAs or master trusts. The technical stuff doesn't really matter, and don't ask me because I won't know all of the rules. But some people are transferring and they're putting all of their fund in the PRSA into either loan notes or unregulated investments and or property. And are they going to make these rules retrospective, or are they going to do what they did with the executive pensions, is say, in 4 years' time, you need to have all this cleared out and you need to be following the rules? So it's interesting. I hope advisors are paying heed. Certainly my experience on the ground right now is that advisors have not seen this article, and they are definitely not taking heed of these this stuff that's coming from the Pensions Authority, because they're making the rules. So I'd like to know what's coming down the line so that you can advise your clients appropriately. So just interesting, I thought.
Well, interesting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, I do. It's for niche. It's definitely for the Irish listeners, but it's interesting. Thank you. Okay, data. Make this interesting then. Interesting data, yeah.
This, I think, is interesting. This is an article I wrote. I wish I did write. It was I read recently from Schroders. Interesting. I don't know if you might know him, Andy. Duncan Lamont at Schroders. He sounds like a Scot, so he must be good. He does push out some very interesting pieces, which are very sort of data-backed and data-driven. So this is about we've seen things like this before. I particularly like this one because of the facts and the data that it quotes. The idea of, should you invest when markets are at an all-time high? And markets have recently had all-time highs, and they came back a bit and they've gone back again. But markets are generally higher than they've ever been in global equity markets around the world. And I don't know about you, but we do get clients saying, well, I've got a good chunk of money now to allocate and to invest. Maybe I should wait till there's a bit of a pullback. Maybe that's a natural thing. And I kind of get the sentiment. And there's also been a number of newspaper articles have been saying similar things. So you should diversify, you should buy gold, you should buy whatever's just gone up because markets are an all-time high. But this is I've put a link to this article in the show notes because I think it's very helpful for people if they are speaking to clients who are a bit nervous currently with the recent highs. Data-driven. So this tracks data back to January 1926. Of the 1,776 months since then, the market was at an all-time high in 354 of them, so 30% of the time. And on average, 12-month returns following an all-time high being hit have been better than at other times. 10.3% ahead of inflation compared with 8.6% when market wasn't at a high. Similar results for 2 and the 3 year horizon. But this is a particular, I think, very interesting stat. $100 invested in the US stock market.
We'll be the judge of that.
Well, listen to this. $100 invested in US stock market in January 1926 will be worth $85,008 by the end of 2023. Inflation adjusted terms growth of 7.1%. In contrast, a strategy which switched out of the market and into cash for the next month, whenever the market hit an all-time high and went back again whenever it wasn't at one, would be worth $8,790. In other words, 90% lower. It's not just a small bit, 90% lower. So if you had invested at an all-time high, this is what you'd have got. If you'd invested at an all-time high and then moved out of the markets into cash just for a month after an all-time high, you'd have 90%. Obviously, it's a very long time. It's 100 years, basically, of data. But that and a number of other points of reference and data points that he's put in the article, I just think are quite helpful to clients. We know the facts that you should invest all the time because markets go up more than they go down. But I get that some people can be worried and concerned sometimes, but sometimes it is useful to just back it up with some facts and some data. It's a good article. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Della Voce.
Okay, I think it's Alan. You've got your hand raised on your own point. But that's which, even by your standards, is loquaciousness taken to the next level. Wodge.
Two quick comments. Number one, I would advise against showing any clients 100-year-old data, because the clients are like, here, that's just horseshit, and you're picking numbers now to suit yourself. And I've got that direct feedback from a couple of clients, so I would just warn against that. Charlie Bilello did a great podcast on exactly this, Alan, and I think I shared it before. And it's about timing the market and trying to get in at the perfect time versus someone who had a mediocre outcome and someone who actually invested in the worst days. So look, it's definitely relevant. But one thing that we all can't account for, the maths can say the maths. Human nature is human nature. And if you just landed on a big shed load of money, which is your life savings, and going, it's market highs, I suppose it's more about, obviously, if we believe in equities, you're going to have market highs all the time. That's the nature of it. So it's about kind of an education piece. But
I get that. And just to qualify that comment, I get it. 100-year data is arguably is questionable. The article does cite 10, 20, 30, 50 year and 100 years. 10 years we can look at, but the story is exactly the same.
Yeah. I like quoting kind of 20, 25 year data because you have, and also you do have the financial crisis in there. So it's like, right, what's the worst case scenario here? Well, let's look at what happened then.
Just for example, 20 years, had you done this and switched to cash after all-time highs, the portfolio was 33% less than the one when you just invested and let it ride. So
yeah.
Interesting.
I'm not aware of the guy, but I'll be following his articles. The interesting description they're using there, Alan, is wealth destroyed by switching. This is definitely an advisor for professionals. This is vitamin C for us, just to remind us. I mean, a lot of this we inherently know, but the way he's gone into a great amount of detail is useful. Yeah, you'd rarely share something like this with the client. This is the whole logic over emotion that Carl touched upon. You coming in there with spreadsheets, data, it's pure logic. The client's sitting there is full of emotion, and there's always going to be a massive disconnect. That's it. Over to the next point, I think.
Okay, and the next point, my friend, is you.
Okay, let me just refresh what's going on here. Okay, so this is sound like Carl. It's been a long week in Lisbon, bloody hell. Weekend with the kids, full on this morning. Okay, so this is an article. I think I shared this with Alan, but we'll briefly talk about it now.
So in bed.
You did.
In bed.
On the plane, in the restaurant, at the bar, on the walk to the restaurant.
Nick's making coffee for everyone.
Pillow talk. He didn't make me a coffee.
In our 2-bed palace at the top of that tower. So this is a startup called Clove, and they're looking to basically offer advice to lower value clients. Its co-founder, CEO Christian Owen told Professional Advisor that the company's goal is to lower the threshold for traditional human-led advice from the current range he's quoting as 100,000 to 250,000, closer to 10 to 20,000. There's more to this story before we start discussing it. Initially, they're going to hire 5 to 10 advisors and then build out. But this firm has raised 14 million pre-seed funding, 14 million USD, so 10 million UK pounds before they've even opened up the shutters. And they're going to try and go after a lot of low-value clients. The final piece of the story is the co-founders are ex-Nutmeg. That's why it's very likely that some serious investors, the funding round has been led by Accel, which are a pretty famous VC, and there's a couple of other notable investors in this early round. So will be interesting to see how this plays out.
JP Morgan will be writing a check in about 7 years.
Exactly.
Maybe. Can they rinse and repeat?
That's all they're doing. That's all they're doing.
Success story.
There was some.
Yeah, they're going to throw a lot of money at it.
Somebody sent me a link to another robot, but this is now so the new game in town is an AI powered
agent
robot. Yeah. So there's one called Chip, but getchip.com or .co.uk.
Chip's been out a while, Alan.
Yeah,
They're
it's been
quite
out for
big.
it's
There's
been
a
out
lot
a couple
good
of
stuff,
years,
yeah.
but somebody said because whether they've just started to say because it's like
They will create good
like,
stuff. Actually,
it's
I
like
think,
back
Jim.
in the day when if you put .com after your name, your business name, you sort of get a bigger multiple in your value. So if you say we're an AI powered robo advice thing, then you probably consider it to be more valuable. I had a quick look in their website, and by the way, I'm a big fan of innovation. The track record of this stuff just hasn't been good.
Money.
But
Yeah.
if you look at their website, I can't remember. It looked like they had someone like 250 employees. I'm thinking, man, that's a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of salaries to pay, a lot of
We're
all
talking
sorts
about
of
Chip
things.
now, Alan, not Clove, yeah?
No, yeah,
Chip, not Clove.
Chip,
Yeah, cool.
getchip.com or .co.uk. I mean, good luck to them all, but the track record isn't good.
They've got to be food related names. Have they nutmeg, chip, and clove? I think it's right. I mean that. Sorry, I don't follow this guy because I'm not particularly interested. But 10 million sterling is piss all. Why is that impressive?
Pre-seed for an idea.
Nutmeg, we're losing that about every other nanosecond.
That's true.
No,
That's a decent amount of money to
raise 10 million
as a
pre-seed is
startup
impressive in London.
idea.
They'll blow through that in
really
a week.
Impressive.
It's just a rinse and repeat. I'm sure. Good luck to them.
We'll see.
We know this. Okay, then in 5 years' time, we'll come back and see how Clover's wound up with losses of X, Y, Z.
I may be reporting back on the success or not to see how they get on, but I wish them all the best.
I mean, a device threshold of 10K, Jesus. Okay, Wodge.
Is this the visual capitalist?
C.
Yeah. Okay.
China.
Yeah. So I think Andy Hart introduced me to the visual capitalist. Do you follow them, Andy? Yeah.
Yeah, amazing every day.
Yeah, they're really good.
I
would.
As if you did.
100% did. But
I forgot more than you know, Alan.
Go on.
Oh, you're not in your bedroom
at
now?
lunch
Come on.
in Lisbon, I used to have to put my hand up to ask to speak.
No, you had the talking cap.
I had to talk, so I had to put my hand
Just ignored
oh
it.
my god.
The cap
Anyway,
on.
yeah. Anyway, visual capitalist, right? Probably the reason I put this down was follow them, number one. But number two, this is really good. It's about the global central bank reserves. And when you look at this and you, I suppose I'm just so tired of the noise from the United States and them thinking that they're ruling the world and all that. China actually have all the financial clout. And there have been some articles written recently, which I'm sure people who are interested in investing have read about China buying up a lot of the gold reserves via their central bank and via this massive, massive reserve that they have. And that's what is driving the gold price. And maybe they're doing that to destabilize the US dollar. Who knows if that's true? It's just a very interesting slide that maybe we're looking in the wrong place for the people who are going to I don't know, lead the world in the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. Certainly not to be dismissed and certainly to be taken very, very seriously, I would say.
A couple of points. I liked your prediction then, Carl. In the next 1 decade, 2 decade, 3 decades, we just don't know when things are going to change. But there is this switching of the world order. I don't know exactly the percentage. Nick might know, but out of that 3.5 trillion, I think 75, 80% is US treasuries. So I wonder how aggressively they're going to continue to buy them. So yeah, it's a huge switch of the world order. But yeah.
But isn't that's part of the strategy to buy the gold? They haven't ditched any of the US. They haven't ditched any of the US treasuries.
US, yeah.
But they're not buying much more.
See the way I said that
sorry, Carl.
without opening my mouth. That's the point. And
yes.
Could they then, if they built enough for the gold reserve, could they then destabilize the US dollar by ditching a load of the treasuries? And that's the big point here. So they've stopped buying at the level that they were in terms of the US treasuries, but they're not buying them at the level that they were. So look, it's just an interesting one. It could be just, a whole lot of BS news, but they are super, super, super powerful. And if you look at, some of the stuff they're doing, getting all of the Asian countries together and they're having their own G8s and they're going, here, let's all gather here and let's show these guys what it's really all about. So anyway, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
let's not get too.
they could pivot a bit like the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, who has similar assets to what they're looking after. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see where else they deploy their capital.
Alan, is your hand actually raised, or was we just talking and ignoring it?
Well, let's say I'm going to say yes. Yes.
No, if it's not raised, we'll move on because we got a guest waiting, and so if you've got something to contribute.
All right, I'll leave it.
Thank you. I will quickly tie a bow on this. The biggest mistake we made in 2001 was letting China into the World Trade Organization. And for the last 2.5 decades, they pilloried IP from other successful capitalist economies. And it will come round to bite them in the arse. Okay, Smith, CLOs and First Brand.
You guys been following this First Brand in the US and their private credit and the money they've been lent? Not follow it at all?
No.
Collateralized loan obligations?
Collateralized loan obligations, private credit. There's a bit of a precedent to this. So right now, there's private credit companies who lend other companies, or banks who lend to companies, or just private companies who are borrowing money of others, and it's all kind of contagious, and various people are borrowing of each other's. And I've read a massive article, I think in the FT recently, and is
this with Nvidia and people like that, Alan? And IBM?
No, nothing to do with the video. No. There are just thousands of still large, big companies, but they're borrowing money and they're doing various kind of creative things with it, shall we say, to eke more money out of the system. And what has happened over the last quietly over the last probably decade is that investment banks, smart people, you imagine, who are always looking for a new product to sell, have packaged up a load of these loan obligations, have gone to credit rating agencies and got AA.
This sounds very familiar.
And
I think it was a movie.
Then what happened?
Joining a couple.
They made
of
a
dots,
movie called The Big Short.
Yeah, right. So joining a few dots here. We've talked in the past
Absolute
about
shambles.
Private market investments, private equity, private credit. I remember speaking to an advisor, Andy, you and I know a while ago, about one of his big high net worth clients who was just saying, I love private credit. Someone else has told me I'm going to buy this thing, private credit. So effectively lending your money, your investments to companies who themselves are kind of borrowing off each other. So the billions and billions which have moved into private credit markets over the last year, well, this stuff is, if you read some of these articles, they are all kind of interlinked. And the first kind of canary in the coal mine, if you will, is this company called First Brand, who was some sort of automotive parts business in like the US Midwest. And they were lent money by a bank called Jefferies Investment Bank, who are again a big player, a big investment player. And it's basically gone tits up, to give you a technical expression. And Jefferies are sitting holding the plate as it past the parcel as it's gone round. I understand First Brand have gone under, they've gone bust. Jefferies are saying you misled us and lied to us, but of course Jefferies have packaged it up and sold a lot of this stuff on to other people. And right now, I don't know, hopefully it'll be nothing like the CDOs, collateralized debt obligations, that all went tits up. But I'm just flagging it up as being something to keep your eye on. Is this if it is contagious and one thing leads to another, and other banks are affected by it to the same token, well, it ultimately will affect all of us. So look out for that, and I would sort of keep yourself up to date and abreast of it, because you might get some clients who've been reading about this saying, should I be concerned? But at least being informed is to be well armed.
Okay, good stuff. We're 34 minutes in. We've got a couple more topical tidbits before we move on to the meat and potatoes. This is the quickie. Just amazingly, somehow, the CISI, the Chartered Institute of Securities and Investments, have a syllabus for their advanced financial planning exam, and they have learning resources at the back of this syllabus. And somehow, on page 12, admittedly, on the last page of this PDF, under podcasts, there we are. We're now a recommended resource from I would guess the largest chartered financial advice organization in the world, which is amazing. Hat tip to devoted Trappist and financial advisor Joshua Carr for bringing that to my attention. It's a good thing. I still can't quite believe it. Okay.
No, sorry, Nick. This is something to explore on this. If the CISI are very pro us, and it sounds like they are, we could get this podcast CPD accredited via them, because they are the biggest CPD provider, I think, in the UK. And I'm working on a project with them at the moment on that. So we'll take that offline.
Okay.
But that could be something that would be very helpful for advisors. Yeah.
Very
Believe
good.
it or
We'll
not.
add it to the to-do list.
Yeah.
Well,
Andy,
no, but
Andy, can you
given
sort
all the
that
hours
out?
that we spend on doing this every year, that's our CPD done. So we're just putting the show together.
Trap podcast. That's your structured CPD.
No, I'm telling you, it's going to have to be unstructured. It's going to have to be everything. Unfiltered, unstructured, unplanned, unrehearsed, unmanageable. Okay, moving on. Financial advisor and wealth manager sentiment towards ESG.
Yeah, I mean, we touch upon this. This has been a flavor du jour, comes in and out. Mostly it's coming out. But yeah, the headline is Financial Advisors and Wealth Managers' Sentiment Towards ESG Worsens. It's a little bit like Alan's link to Schroders. There's a shed load of data, a shed load of graphs, but it's, I mean, the three metrics that they've measured are performance, charges, and risk. And it's the declines are insane. They've gone from sort of plus 30% to minus 40%. Anyway, it's just saying that financial advisors and wealth managers are, their love, if they've ever had love for this market and segment, is just absolutely cratering.
It all started with my speech 3-4 years ago at Clive Waller's retreat in Surrey.
I think it probably started before then, Nick. Thankfully,
no, I don't think so.
We've seen this movie. We've seen this movie before, so we obviously didn't pile in, but some people have, and apparently clients are now not even asking for it. It's not even a thing.
I think that's what I
rebranded.
thought. It will be a lot of this sentiment driven by clients. There was a time when clients were. I mean, don't forget
on the front foot. Yeah.
Don't forget that, as we mentioned before, you still have to
A regulatory
ask that.
Regulatory
Regulatory
yes,
requirement.
Yeah, sure.
What are your feelings toward? Yeah, but Nick, your meetings are not recorded, Nick. So, what do you think of that rubbish? Nick will say. What do you think of all that rubbish, that ESG nonsense? And then
it's impossible to ask the question without it being leading.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to.
Exactly.
As I treat your customers fairly, I will not ask leading questions. That's my response. Right, last final point of the Topical Tidbits, episode 82. WODGE, a retirement survey with insights. God help us.
That's really good. Goldman Sachs. It's 38 pages long, but it's not really 38 pages long because there are lots of nice graphics. But and now it's US based, so take it with a pinch of salt. But there's a couple of things that came out of it, and we have discussed it before. And one of the things was that some people now are overly optimistic about the amount of money that they already have or that they are going to accumulate to look after their retirement. And the optimism is coming from, obviously, bull markets over a long time, but also an underestimation of the impact of inflation because, and Alan made this point before, and I've used it loads of times, Alan, the inflation rate is not necessarily your personal inflation rate. And I'm certainly seeing that with my kids going to college and stuff. It's just mental. Like if I was inflating my expenses by 4%, I'd be bloody broke, right? So, look, it's a really interesting survey. They're literally putting this up on lights saying, we might be overly optimistic, everybody. So everybody needs to maybe take a step back here because we foresee a problem coming. And then there was a term in it that I've never heard before. And you're all, of course, going to say, of course we heard of that before. Financial grit. Yeah, hey. So financial grit is your discipline to stick to your financial plan, to stick to your savings rate, to stick to, what you've set out are my goals, dreams, and ambitions, and I'm going to stick to it, and that's what it is. And that if you have a high degree of financial grit, you have a high likelihood of succeeding into your retirement. So I thought it was really, really good, and I thought they also kind of set out like competing priorities for like the baby boomers versus the Gen Z and all the people in between. I forget all the other terms, but it's a really good report, really well set out, and it would be something that I'm a little bit concerned about myself. Like Nick always alludes to this. Like since 2009, it's been like, hey, right, okay, blips along the way and all that, but what happens if we have a prolonged period of a corrective market? and what does that do for everybody's portfolios. And if you're just about on there and you've been living the high life because your plan told you that, hey, you're going to be absolutely fine in 10, 15, 20 years, then, maybe it's time for a little bit of a reassessment on that. So I would recommend it highly. Goldman Sachs retirement something survey.
New economics of retirement.
Yeah,
Okay.
New economics of retirement. It's really good, really good.
Decent.
Yeah.
Right, who raised that? Quickly, guys. You both got your hands raised. I don't know who went first.
That sounds really interesting. Thanks for sharing, Carl. There is, I like that term, financial grit. There's a very good book. I've forgotten the name of the author, but I read it quite a few years ago. It's called Grit, and it just shows you a lot of research.
Duckworth.
Yeah, that's her. Just the research. Those people who have got grit, who can grind their way through certain things, or just kind of hold their feet to the fire and deal with stuff. They just, as you might imagine, their successes are exponentially better than those who kind of fall over at the first hurdle. What's also interesting, though, is you link that survey to the aforementioned one about Vanguard saying you should have 70% of your assets long term in defensive, which by and large, using history as our guide, tend to barely outperform inflation over the long term. And again, which is why, Nicholas, this is an art as much as a science. Take all these things into the mix, blend them all together, and deliver your own individual version of financial planning to your own individual range of clients. But yeah, sounds like a good article.
Yeah.
Carl.
No,
Andy?
definitely. And I think over the last century, the figures say that bonds have beaten inflation by maybe 100 basis points or something per annum. But our clients' inflation, no chance.
Yeah,
no chance. I don't think bonds are a store of value in any sense or shape. Okay, we are at 41 minutes in, so I think it's time we moved on to the meat and potatoes of episode 82, and we have a guest. This was a lady who I think spoke at Abraham Okunsanya's Timeline conference, was very well received. Friend of the show, Abraham, Triple N. And she is now going to be let into the room, if I can work this out without the whole thing collapsing. Let's let her in. I'll be there. Has it worked?
there she is.
Yeah.
And let me play the silly tune just to annoy everybody.
Yes.
Hold on a minute. There we go.
Hey, there's somebody at the door. Oh, there's somebody at the door. Come on, there's somebody at the door. Oh, there's somebody.
Megan, thank you for waiting in the lobby of the Trap Studio. You've made it through somehow. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Alan, maybe you'd like to give an introduction to Megan.
Well, yeah, Megan, thank you for joining us. First thing to ask you, Megan, is whereabouts in the world are you speaking to us from?
I'm in Italy. Italy.
Right.
That's where I spend most of my time these days.
Yeah, excellent. Because I know that you spend a lot of time in Europe and you're traveling around a lot. And when Nick mentioned just before you came on the show,
Yes.
now that you were a speaker at the Advisor 3.0 conference in London back in November, I think it was. And what happened?
Yeah.
I didn't manage to see your
I was.
talk, but a number of my colleagues and my team went along, and they were frankly raving about it. Said it was just amazing, so impressive, so impactful. Spoke to, told the rest of our team about it, and then so that led me down a bit of a rabbit hole to some of the work that you do, and hence, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. What would be great as we start off this conversation, Megan, is for you just to share a bit about your background, what it is you do, and what sort of brought you to where you are today, such that our audience of, quite a few thousand financial planners in the UK can learn more about you.
Yeah. So my background is in financial psychology, or the psychology of financial planning. I have a PhD in personal financial planning from Kansas State, and I also teach at Kansas State, Columbia, Rutgers, a few other places. The new CFP textbook that you guys have through FPSB, I'm the editor of that textbook that's on financial psychology, if anybody's picked that up yet.
Excellent.
Worked with, if you guys know Paul Grimes and Emer Kirk over in Ireland.
Ireland, yeah.
Worked with them on that project. Yeah. And so I teach advisors, I work with advisors, I consult with advisors, but all in the name of financial psychology and the psychology of financial planning. And so like what what is that? In many ways, like when I like talk about it with students, this whole idea I think kind of began with began with neoclassical economics. Like, what do we do with this money? And we have life cycle hypothesis and cool things like that. And then along came the behavioral economists, and they said, well, okay, that's what people should do, but like, what do people actually do? So that's what the behavioral economists like brought to the table. And then now along came my group, the financial psychology people. And we ask, okay, we know what they're supposed to do. We know what they are doing. So like, how do we help them to like do the right thing, or, whatever that sort of deal is. And so I think it's, it's an applied version of behavioral economics, and less about the macro and more thinking about the micro, which is why I work a lot with financial advisors. Financial advisors are not necessarily trying to solve things at like a policy level, how to keep people in their pensions and get pensions and things like that to begin. But how do I help this person? How do I get them to spend, or how do I get them to save, or how do I help them to sell the family house, or, whatever it is that they are struggling with and thinking about, and how we communicate those things, what we consider in terms of just people's psychology and decision-making ability, all of this kind of feeds financial psychology.
Interesting. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I have a question, Megan. I didn't realize that you were working with Emer and Paul. That's very, very interesting, and that's I'm always talking to the guys about raising the standards in Ireland. So this is extremely encouraging. Absolutely thrilled to hear that you're working with the folks. I've read your. I've read your Substack, and I'd say it's how I described it to the guys when I heard that you were coming on here. I was saying this is real thought leadership. The fact that it's aimed at financial planners, is there one particular theme or topic that the financial planners kind of lean towards? And then that will bring me to my second question. So, like, what are the financial planners who are eager to learn the psychology of money, shall we say? What are they being brought towards that maybe that they need a bit of help with, and that they're kind of guided towards in your Substack? If you can, share some of the articles.
Yeah, well, I mean, financial advisors kind of come to it in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's because their clients are stressed out. Like, in fact, you guys were kind of talking about this last week or last time you guys were talking about, like, I think it was like first world problems or something. You were talking about how, we don't want a market crash, but in a market crash, we feel like we're really doing our jobs, and, clients are calling us and we're talking to them about things. Okay. So there's that piece of like, what do I do, when my client's kind of freaking out, or when my client is really stressed about what's happening. There's that. Sometimes financial advisors want to know, like there is a sales aspect to it. I don't teach sales, but certainly there's a way to be empathetic and connected. And, this is also related. And I think that there can be bigger things, as we move from this sort of like, I certainly, financial planning has grown now. We have all these weird artifacts of like product sales and things like that. And that people need products. Like, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing per se. People need insurance and stuff like that. But because of that, there's like a lot of behaviors and like things that advisors do that are really kind of artifacts of the way financial planning used to be. It used to be products, and then it was fancy investments, and then it became about the plan, and the plan technically is a product, if you want to think of it like that. And now I think we're moving more and more into this relational space where we're thinking about financial planning as an experience, and helping people to think in a really broad way, and maybe in a different way, than perhaps they had thought about their money before. So, not just like having enough and not running out, certainly we need to still do that calculation. But then also like when people get to retirement, like, what do we do when they're too scared to spend? Or, what do we do when like
Yeah.
they need to sell the family house or want to consider selling the family house, but damn, there's so many memories there. I can't do it. Like these are questions of financial psychology. These are
Yeah.
questions of connection and communication, not just the numbers.
Yeah, brilliant. I love the way you described that the evolution has been from product selling, and then it was about the plan, but now it's about the goals, the dreams, the aspirations, and how we help people, hold their hand through that, and help them through some maybe potentially difficult decisions to get them to there. But before I bring the other guys in, I do have one other question.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're doing all this coaching to advisors, and you are trying to bring them on this journey. So let's assume that we're all in it, that we love the plan, right? But we're trying to make it more about this experience that you described. What's the one blind spot you see? What's the one thing that you'd like to get all of the financial planners in the world and give them a good shake and go, no, this is what you need. This is what you need to really, really be focused in on. This is the bit that you're missing in that transition from the plan to this experience. Is there something that we need to fine tune? We need to hone in on a little bit more.
Yeah. So and I always point to this particular research paper because I thought that it was, really well done, but was just so interesting. So that there was a paper that was done back in like 2022, K-State, where I work. I didn't actually work on this paper, but my colleagues at K-State, Allianz, so big financial company, was involved, and Money Quotient, who also do kind of like, they're in this financial psychology space, and Money Quotient is a great program. So what they did was they went out and found like 1,000 advisors, and then they got those advisors to ask their clients, and they asked things like, do you talk about values? And 90% of the advisors said that they did. What do you want to guess the client said?
Very small.
Much less than 10%.
It was less. It was like 40%, cut in half. And I thought about this for like such a long time, because many of those financial planners that were involved were like K-State students. And I was like, no, how can my students, not be getting through to these people? And, are they not doing the work? And I don't think that. I think that financial plan, like the act of having a financial planning relationship, is a really new and very different experience for many people. Most of us grow up in households where we never talk about money, or if we do, it's like very bad or like, not good. And then we just grow up and we sort of think that those things, and that you just don't talk about it, or that like maybe if you don't talk about it, like it'll all be okay. And then eventually maybe some of us start working with a financial planner and we have no clue how to talk to this person. Yeah. And so I think that probably many financial planners have had, according to them, a values conversation. But the client walked in thinking like, am I ever going to make it through this tax situation? Or what the hell is going on with this pension? And, we're asking them questions about their values. And I'm not saying that that's not important, but I'm saying in that moment, they don't remember. And if you don't keep going back to it, and, go back to it from different perspectives. And we know more of that from like positive psychology. Like we actually know what matters to a life well lived, not just a life full of lots of savings. And I think that the opportunity is for advisors to be more directive, more specific, and like, we're going to have a values meeting, like the whole hour, we're going to talk about values, and it's going to be great. And here's how we're going to do it. And this, instead of just kind of like nonchalantly asking a few things about values, like that's a good start, but we need to be more directive. We need to be more clear, because people don't have any context for what it is that you're trying to do. And so if you want to do it and you want to get more out of it with the client, then the power there is to be more explicit, to talk about the relationship, and to talk about the expectations, and to talk about the way you're going to talk about money in this relationship, because it will be very different than anything that they have experienced before.
Yeah. Look, I absolutely love it. So if it doesn't work the first time, you got to revisit the old ground and go back. So I'll bring Andy in now, I think.
Well, and even if it does, people change.
Yeah.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Andy, despite what our ridiculous names say, so sorry about that. Big fan of your work, been following you for many years. My question to you is, I suppose, a huge subject, but the subject of couples and money, and how do advisors navigate that intersection between our relationship with them individually, our relationship with them as a couple, their relationship as a couple. So yeah, any thoughts on couples and financial advisors?
So I would say maybe not half, but I would say probably at least a third, of your clients come to you because there's some sort of a disagreement between them, and they think that they can get you to take one of their sides and help them to win, against the other client or against the other partner.
Told you.
And this is not a good idea. And so, like, kind of advice number one that comes to working with couples is to establish from the get-go that you take care of the coupleship, not necessarily like that your goal is to try to be neutral and serve the coupleship, and that we're not, going to, in fancy psychology terms, we're not going to triangulate, we're not going to take sides. We're just going to reinforce that we serve the coupleship, and I can help you come up with ways to have a better conversation so that you can figure out, how you can come together. But like, my goal is to serve you in your coupleship. So that's rule number one. Don't take anybody's sides. Two, there's always this is neither here nor there. Lots of times it gets spoken about in terms of gender, but there's always at least one person who's a little bit more like, I want to talk about the money. And the other person is like, I feel like I could talk less about this money and maybe only come to like every other meeting or something. People are going to do what they're going to do. We can't force them. But I will say there is great opportunity to just like again, establishing the ground rules of the relationship, that when we talk about money and you're both here, I'm going to ask how you both feel, and I don't want the answer to necessarily be just like what he said or what she said. I would like for you guys to think ahead of time, maybe on your own about what you're thinking about, and bring that to the meeting. I would like to hear from everyone, more ideas, the better. And so kind of going out of your way, to purposefully try to speak to both partners. Maybe if one, is kind of like the more talky partner, maybe ask the quiet partner first and, kind of get them to speak a little bit. So that can also be quite helpful. And then, I think sometimes it can be worthwhile to ask just different communication strategy among them. How do you guys make financial decisions together? What was the successful decision in the past? What makes financial decisions difficult? When you think about our work together, how do you see that as an individual opportunity and an individual support? And how do you see that, in relation to your relationship and, what in your life together? That sort of having these discussions, even though people may not know what to say, and they may actually say that, I've never done this, I don't know. But this is now an opportunity for you to say, well, some people in one, they really like me to email them. And then other people, they want to have a phone call. And so if you're more of the email type and you're more the phone call type, I just want to know that. And when we come and have these meetings together, is it helpful if I send things ahead of time because one of you likes to read it? Just trying to get, some understanding of not just what you're going to do, but how it's going to happen. This can lower anxiety, but also can be a bridge, to really great discussions on the different expectations of the different individuals involved. Couples are hard. It's not easy work.
Great answer. It's a great answer. Yeah.
I love the term coupleship.
Thank you.
I serve the coupleship. I think it's the first.
Oh, Megan, don't give Andy new phrases to use. He's bad enough as he is. Okay. Right. I've got a question for you, Megan. Trust. So when you've been advising long enough, there seems to be a level of trust between yourself and your clients will do what you say, not because they necessarily understand what you're saying, but it's you saying it. But I can't really explain how I've got, all of us have got to this stage in our careers, and maybe just longevity. For you, what have you learned about how trust is built in a client financial advisor relationship? And are there any not hacks or are there any hacks or shortcuts? What should advisors be doing to engender trust with their clients as quickly as they can?
Mm-hmm. So trust is for sure one of those things that's built over time. You have to you have to walk the walk. You can't just talk the walk. And
Yeah.
I think people learn that over time. Again, we sort of mentioned already that having a financial planning relationship is a really new thing. And so it takes time for people to figure out what that is. And like, you're not going to trick them, and, that you're going to follow through on your word. So there are ways that, some of those things just take time. I do think that having more conversations, almost like we were talking about with the couples, having more conversations about the literal expectations of the relationship. When do you like me to call? Do you like me to email? Is 24 hours okay? How about 48? When I work like this, and this is what I'm thinking about. When we have a market swing, this is what I typically do. Letting the people know ahead of time, what to expect from you, can be a huge trust builder. And then obviously when you come through on that, and even a very clear demonstration of trust.
Yeah.
Fun fact, though, in the beginning, you can't really just make somebody trust you, but you can make yourself more likable. And I'll tell you, funny enough, that this research comes from like speed dating. And so people, like, lots of research has been done on who gets the second date. And this research has been done at like Harvard, some pretty fancy universities. And the thing that they found with all the speed dating research is that the person who is statistically significantly more likely to get a second date is the person who asks more follow-up questions.
Sorry,
the trick to this is...
what's a second date?
What were you going to say? A second date.
That's a whole other podcast.
Okay,
Don't worry about that. Nick's just trying to be funny.
Like we don't need to worry about trust for you. I don't think so. It's just that likable part.
That's a different podcast.
Yeah, we're trying to make you more likable, Nick. Come on.
The follow-up thing really works. And so, like, again, I mentioned I lived in Italy. So maybe Alan would have said, oh, Italy, Megan, that's so interesting. What do you like to eat? Pasta or pizza? And I say, well, I really like the Neapolitan pizza here. And then he would say, oh, actually, my favorite thing is this other pizza. Okay. Alan just like took over my narrative, like he was only asking me a question just so that he could talk about what
Alan
he likes.
Doesn't get a second date because he asks too many follow-up questions.
Yeah, you can ask too many. There's a limit.
But if we do ask lots of follow-on questions, like 2 or 3, then I can tell you at a brain level what that does. It's like the pleasure center of the brain. So if you're asking someone follow-up questions about themselves, being interested in this other person, it is as though you are feeding them chocolate. That's how that feels at like the brain level. And so when you are meeting somebody for the first time, you are early, in these financial planning relationships and establishing these financial planning relationships. I was reading some research the other day that was talking about after about 8 minutes on the phone with someone asking you kind of question after question, this begins to change your brain chemistry. That like you release more oxytocin, you release more serotonin, which are like all the good feeling, no more dopamine, we release kind of all the good feeling hormones. And so if you spent 8 minutes in the beginning of your call, just asking questions, well, that's so great that you came in and what's going on? And this is the blah, blah, blah. And then you spent like maybe the last 10 minutes, again, kind of doing the same thing, like go down a tangent with them. You will walk away so likable. You will get that second meeting, even if they're like, I don't know about this financial planning crap, but like, maybe they'll think, I just really like that person. I really like that player. And they will come back because we like, as humans, we're just built for that. And so we can use it to our advantage. And be more likable just by asking questions.
It's the Dale Carnegie thing, isn't it? To become listen to, I've now forgotten. What's he say? To become interesting, become interested. And it's so true, and it holds so true in so many facets of our life. Smithy, you've got your hand raised for Megan.
Yeah, Megan, I just want to kind of pull a few strands together here. You said earlier on in the conversation that the financial advice, the financial planning profession has moved on, and we know, and we've all participated in it, and there's a lot of artifacts that we've come from a product focused industry to maybe a planning led profession. And we've lived it and we've enjoyed it over the years. But A, not everyone has done, and B, as I think you alluded to this, our clients haven't necessarily got that. And the media and the industry, the television and the media still talk about products and investment funds and what have you.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of joining a few dots here. In your Substack, I was reading a few of the articles over the weekend. There's one that really struck a chord with me, and I'd like to ask you about it. And it talks to all this stuff. It's, if I remember correctly, right question, wrong time. If you remember that one, and it's, I saw myself in this, because when all this stuff became a bit more mainstream, a decade ago, a bit longer ago, I read the books, bought the ticket, everything that was available then, and went on programs and courses. And I just went out and met prospects and went straight in with these like personal questions. The classics. What does money mean to you? What was money like in your family when you were growing up? And honestly, it eventually kind of worked, but I was sitting there with people saying, literally, what the hell are you talking about? Because I've come here for some pension advice, because that's what I'm expecting. That's what the media and everyone tells me I should do. And you're being like a freaking psychologist to me. So if you can, I think that still exists. I think there are some financial planners out there that are thinking, yeah, I need to get into this stuff. I need to get into this. But can you share your thoughts or your advice for people and how you position it? If you're asking good questions, when is the right time to introduce them?
Yeah, so it relates to this idea of trust. I mean, we're braiding together some strings here, as you said. Okay, so there's no need, in my mind, there's no need to ask one of these like really intense questions. You've only known this person, or they've only known you really for like an hour, maybe two. And I don't know that this is the best way to begin a conversation, because it freaks people out.
Yeah.
And they don't really get it. And, we talked about the research in the beginning about how they like don't even remember. Yeah, because they were worried about their pension. They had an arrow in their arm when they walked into the hospital. And then you said, well, I think we should get a full body scan. You're like, no. There's an arrow here. Let's do that first. And so it's just this, financial planning is the same. They come in, they want to talk about pensions or taxes. And you're like, but tell me about your values. And I'm with you, man. Like, values are important. But if we don't, this kind of goes back to why it's so important to set expectations. If you want to talk about values and like you want to get there sooner than not, then I think it's important to say how I do financial planning is a little bit different. We are going to address like the arrow in your arm. And I think for us to do that in the best way possible, one of the most important conversations that we have is about values. And I recognize that like that might be a little bit of a different place to start, but here's why it's important. And so in our next meeting, I'm going to start there. We're going to be talking about this, and this. These are the types of questions that I'm going to ask you. Is that okay with you? Like, let's start that expectation. Let's begin that conversation instead of just slipping it in there and being like, well, values and, what was life growing up when you were a kid? These things can be really a lot for people. And when they have no context for why you're even asking them that, it gets even weirder. And so you'll get like strange answers. You'll get kind of half-assed answers that, you're going to have to go back and like dig deeper on anyway. And so, believe me, I'm the psychologist type. I have a degree in it. But I think that when we, the first time you go to a therapist's office, I'm sure all of you guys have done this. You go to a therapist's office for the first time and the first conversation that they have, they don't begin talking to you about mom, just like the minute you walk in. They say, hey, this is the type of therapy I practice. This is how we work together. These are the types of things we're going to do. And like, I think that financial planning can happen in the same way. This is how we work together. This is what we do. Here are some examples of like different conversations I want to have, bada bing, bada boom. Now, when they come in and actually have that values meeting conversation, they know why you're doing it. They know that it's coming. They can sort of prepare and think. I think that these are great questions, and I definitely think this matters to where financial planning is going and helping people live fuller lives, connected to the things that really matter most. But I also know that nobody knows how to do that. And if we don't take a little bit of time and structure that, provide some scaffolding and some safety around like what's about to happen, then people don't really know. They just think, well, that's a weird question. And, I guess, he's the only one that asked me that. So that's maybe good, so that's how I feel about those. I think they're good, but they need context, or you need to wait a little bit.
Great advice. Thank you. How are we doing, Nick?
You've got your hand raised, Smithy. So are you still?
That was the last one. That was
I think, Megan, we've that's been brilliant, by the way. Thank you very much for that. Enjoyed that.
Awesome.
That was it's such a massive field.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I want to ask you, Megan. I know you've got some things planned. Yes, we mentioned, and we put a link to your Substack in the show notes. You were telling me you got some big plans and products and rollouts coming next year. Can you share a little bit about that?
So I mentioned that I train and work with advisors, and so I work at a place called Shaping Wealth. Maybe you guys know Neil Bage.
Yeah, we know
Neil
and
I
Brian
have been friends for a long time, partners at Shaping Wealth. Yeah. So Shaping Wealth, Brian Portnoy, Neil Bage, Joy Leary. So there I have, there'll be different courses and things that are coming. So that's pretty exciting. So check out Shaping Wealth if you haven't before. And then I also do some more like individual firm consulting with advisors through a company called Beyond the Plan with Ashley Kwame. Ashley is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She does financial therapy, as do I. And we work with advisors on more of like a one-on-one basis to like, it's one thing to be on a podcast and you guys are going to hear me in your ears and think like, oh yeah, that question lady, she's got some good ideas. But, I'm going to ask more follow-up questions, like, because she told me that would make me more likable. But these are things that you like really have to practice. Like, that's what's hard about this communication piece, different from like a fancy tax strategy that, we talk about it, we update our financial planning software, we do the strategy. Well, for communication, you have to, it's like a sport, like you don't just start playing, for Manchester because you watched a few videos and like a blog on soccer, or football, whatever you guys want to call it. And, but you don't do that. You have to play with other people real time for years and years, to be that good. Communication is the same. And so this means two things. One, nobody is born a great communicator. People become a great communicator. So if you don't think, well, I just don't have that much EQ or whatever, you can get better. Everybody can get better. And then even if you think you're really good, I have a lot of data that says you're not. So you should still practice too. And then I also believe that practice piece, that it really does have to be something that you commit to and get feedback on. And so because of that, some of the work that we have at Beyond the Plan, gives me an opportunity to do that, to work with, individual advisors on a one-on-one level and give them a little bit more feedback so that they can actually become better communicators.
Fantastic.
Great stuff.
Fantastic.
Great stuff. Megan, we've taken a good chunk of your time. Thank you so much for coming on the Real Advisor podcast, episode 82. We're out on Thursday morning. So it'll be 2 a.m. Italian time. So I want you downloading it then, Megan. Okay, that's the deal. But thank you for your time. We'll put a link to your Less Lonely Money Substack in the so-called show notes, and the Beyond the Plan, the consultative service that you offer with your partner. Brilliant stuff. And thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you, Megan. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Cool. Right.
Take care, guys.
Okay. We're going to move on to the next part of the show, which is what do we do next? We do Culture Corner, don't we? Here we do.
No.
Now, have I got to kick you out, Megan, or are you
questions?
Gonna,
it's
questions.
questions.
Okay, fine.
Before we go
Culture
there,
Corner,
I
if I
just
can
realised
find
that I
it.
came home with this from Lisbon.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you watching on...
Actually, it's right.
You've got to watch
Forget
this
that.
on YouTube.
Trappist questions. Sorry. Trappist questions. The Trappist from this the question this week is from a guy called, and I know it's a guy because I looked him up, Connor Callahane. Connor says,
it's captured the
hi, how do you all model for later life care and care home costs? Do you use any products like lifetime care annuities, or do you just set aside some capital, and if so, how much? Thanks. Andy, you can answer that.
I don't think anyone heard the question because Andy talked across the entire.
Well, it's on the. I'm not reading out again. If you want to scroll down, it's on the.
Yeah,
It's on the,
we
it's on the
can. We
slate.
know it, but the audience and the
I'll,
listeners may
I'll
have
answer the
misheard
question.
it.
No
Maybe in your
problem. I
answer,
read it
Andy, you
earlier.
can sort of paraphrase the question.
No, it basically says, "Are we keeping the music on, Nick?"
You can fade out. You can talk over it.
Oh my God.
Okay, the question is from Connor Carolyn. Hi, how do you all model for later life care and care home costs? Do you use any products like lifetime care annuities, or do you just set aside some capital, and if so, how much? I will answer this. I could answer this. It would take me a long time to answer this
Just
conclusively.
one way. Just answer it one way.
I'm just going to answer it one way.
Tell us what you do,
and
Andrew.
Sweet. It's a deep subject, Alan. It's a shallow question with a deep answer. Look it up. So, for most clients who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s, I don't add any additional extra care costs in the final, let's say, 5 or 6 years of their life. If they're older with health issues, I do factor in and create what ifs for various scenarios playing out. If they're the surviving spouse and they've got to leave the home and pay high care costs, I can factor that in. It depends. It's client specific. Yes, I do use lifetime care annuities. I do quite a lot of work in that space, but that's different to making a projection for care costs for younger clients. That's actually someone in a care home that has a known cost, that has known financial assets. So it's a deep question to answer. I don't know if anyone else wants to give it a stab. I'm assuming not.
No.
Nicholas?
No, you've answered it eventually. Okay, if you've got questions to put to the Trap Pack, please do so in the link in the pinned tweet, and also in the so-called show notes. There's a link there, and we are actually getting close to. We've got about 10 more questions to get through. So, as with the reviews, if we could refresh the hop up with some new questions, so we don't run out. Otherwise, we'll just make some up, because that's the kind of people we are, deep on the integrity side of things. Right, moving on quickly. Culture Corner.
He always does this. He doesn't tease it. You're supposed to tee us up. I believe I'm first. Having come back from a few days in Lisbon with you guys, I didn't do too much at the weekend, to be fair. But one thing I did was watch. I don't know if any of you've seen it. The Netflix mini series called Matchroom, which is about that company, that sports promotion company. Eddie Hearn is kind of the face of it, although it used to be his dad, Barry Hearn. But Barry, who's 76, is still around. I just thought it was fascinating. It's a 6-part. I binge watched all of them. 6-part mini series or whatever. Just their whole, and it was sort of filmed towards the end of last year, early part of this year. So if you are into sport and you knew all the big boxing matches which were going on, and the darts and various other things. So their main 3 sports are darts, snooker, and boxing. Guess which of those 3 is the biggest money generator, by the way?
I've seen it, so I won't answer the question. You boys go for it.
Darts, snooker, or boxing? What generates the most money for their company?
Well done, Nick.
You wouldn't think so, though, would you? But darts, darts by some margin. Anyway, I like these things which are a kind of blend of it's business, it's sport. There's a family dynamic going on. Eddie Hearn's a character, quite like him, but it's very entertaining, well worth watching. I recommend it. It's called Matchroom. It's on Netflix.
It is decent, and the presence of Saudi and obviously the amount of money that they're throwing at sport was a theme of it, and they're just getting started. So, I mean, wow!
Yeah, watch this space for all global sports. What's going to happen
on every single type of sport? Yeah, very interesting. Over to you, Carlos.
Yeah, before I jump in, can I just say, because it descended into chaos there as Megan was leaving, but we just got a masterclass in how to sell real financial planning. It was absolutely amazing, and definitely
it was good.
That was brilliant.
People should definitely follow her.
Good.
Good point.
I just thought it was absolutely amazing. Like, how do you do this? And she just did step by step there. Anyway, this is hilarious, Alan. Because we were in Lisbon last week, I didn't read or listen to anything either. So I didn't know that you put up a Netflix thing. So I put up the Netflix, The House of Guinness. It's absolutely brilliant. Really well made. Great story. Apparently, there's a good deal more fiction than fact in it in terms of the kind of storyline that it ends up with didn't happen. However, Ireland back in the 1800s is heavily featured, and you'll all see how far we've come. It's been an amazing journey, but it's a great story. Really, really well filmed, really well made, and some great acting in it. I think you'll love it. I think there's 8 parts to it. It's brilliant. I loved it anyway.
It's next on my list.
Good stuff. I listened to a rival podcast. We could call it a rival podcast, the FT Advisor podcast, which, given how shambolic we are, there's very poor sound quality. The sound levels between the two people are terrible. That's by the by. This was on private markets. And the old thing about somebody will believe anything when their salary is dependent on it. Anyway, Jonathan Moyes from Wealth Club, which is a decent online platform, execution-only platform. If you want to ever dabble in things, God forbid, like VCTs or EISs, it's very slick. I think it's set up by ex-Hargreaves Lansdowne people. Anyway, Jonathan Moyes from Wealth Club was saying how advisors have got to get their clients more interested in private markets. And if you're not doing it, you're missing out on a trick. And it's just this pincer attack that's coming from all angles on this private markets thing is getting tighter and tighter around us. And I would say still, rip hell, hold your hand up and say you do not enter. You do not enter this house with that filth. Get out. That's me.
I just before you finish up, like, I can't believe you just called out another podcast for this poor sound quality with all the shit that goes on with our podcast.
No, the sound quality of ours is fine. It's just that what they didn't do, they weren't talking over each other or holding up pictures or stuff like that, which I admit is not the greatest of things to do.
I think you should mention your famous saying, Carl, cat and the dogs.
So there's a phrase in Ireland, well, I don't know if it's in Ireland or whether I use it.
Pot called kettle black.
The Irish version. It's the Irish version is the dog calling the cat hairy hole. So I think that's what Nick just did there now. Anyway, moving along.
Okay. This is quite a short episode for us. People are going to be enjoying this.
Not if you keep on talking about stuff that's not relevant.
Imagine there's three days of this. It was incessant.
He's still hungover, people. Yeah, it's been a long old week. Right. My final topical culture corner, is a book. It's a book by a speaker who I saw speak at the CISI conference called Lee Warren. It's entitled The Busy Person's Guide to Great Presenting, Become a Compelling, Confident Presenter Every Time. It's a really decent book, quite a short read. You do presenting to team, people, talking. It's a must-have book. That's a good mix. 2 Netflix shows, a podcast, and a book. That's it. Over to you to close it up, Nicholas.
All done. Okay, great stuff. Well, what have we done? 1 hour, 83 minutes. It's pretty much there. Okay, dear Trappists, as episode 82 comes to a close, another pile of traps slides down the U-bend of Father Time. It's time for us to say goodbye. Please do leave reviews on iTunes or whatever app you can leave reviews on. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click on that bell thing and you'll get notified when another pile of trap lands on your screen. But until the next time, dear Trappists, from the Trap Pack, it's adios. Take care out there, and we will see you on the other side. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
There we go.
Megan was brilliant.
She was brilliant. Yeah, great.
She was cracking.
Really good.
Absolutely amazing.
Brilliant.
Really good.
Yeah, it's good.